My guest tonight is an incredibly accomplished woman. She is a Canadian actress and comedian. She's a former casting director, an award winning voiceover artist who frequently works with Ocean Productions in Vancouver, British Columbia, and is known for her roles as Near in Death Note, Cybersix in the show Cybersix, and Spike in My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. She's worked in radio. She's done anime dubs. She's voiced cartoon characters as well as done work for video games. She now even teaches the incredible art of voiceover work in her workshops and private training sessions. My God, her resume is literally a mile long. So enough buildup. Let's get to it. Everyone, give a warm PCW welcome to our amazing guest tonight, Miss Cathy Weseluck. All right. Thank you, everybody. This is my wonderful guest for tonight. This is Cathy Weseluck. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to talk to you. Really, just thank you. Thank you.
My pleasure, Mike. It's great to be here, and I can't wait to get started, see what comes out.
Outstanding, outstanding. And my friends call me CQ, so you can call me CQ.
Okay.
Uh, okay, so right out the gate, the first thing I like to ask all my guests, because we are kind of military affiliated and veteran community facing, what is and do you have a military connection?
I can't say that I do, at least personally.
Mhm.
I know friends whose father have been in the military, who therefore had lives where they had to travel around the world on missions, and therefore was constantly uprooted. The struggles that occur with being part of a family that is a military family with those kinds of challenges, not really knowing where you might be posted, how long the posting will be, and all the changes that come with that. Along with, of course, the direct concerns and challenges that the military individuals themselves have to face. So, I know it's a difficult life, obviously, but not personally. But I've had friends who have lived it. Yes.
Wow. It's so nice to hear because the reason I always ask, for those that don't know, is I've found in my experience, when I left the service, when so many others leave the service,
Mhm.
they do feel this sort of disconnect
Absolutely.
and isolation from maybe the general civilian public. And
Yep.
so, I love to point out when we have guests who maybe their cousin or their uncle or their grandfather or even their friend or the guy that I knew that went to high school, my cousin's dog, whatever it is. I
Yeah.
knew someone who served, and it's just to remind folks that like we're closer than you think, and you don't need to be isolated. Some of your favorite voices, some of your favorite actors and actresses have all that understand, and they're there for us as veterans. So thank you for that.
And
Um, Go ahead.
sorry, if I could step in for a second, I just want to
Sure.
say we've done My Little Pony Friendship is Magic and got on board with all the conventions. I have been interviewed many a time by the military bronies. And so I've gotten to know them very, very well in that respect over the years and love to hear their stories. And I just want to thank every one of you for your service and for the heart, blood, guts, emotion, time, and everything else that I've not mentioned that goes into having to do what you do and for giving your all in that. There's no words for it. And so I just want to thank you personally and on behalf of others who can't. Thank you.
Oh,
So
that's wonderful. Yeah, and we're gonna get into the brony stuff. We're gonna get into that. I'm gonna save that one for a little bit
okay,
because I
okay,
because
okay.
I have so many questions. I have so
Go
many
for it.
questions.
Ready.
But before, so obviously we are a pop culture podcast. If you couldn't tell from my background, I'm a big old nerd. What what stuff do you geek out about? Whether it's movies or music or history or like what flames the geek passion in your heart?
Well, geek is a very interesting term because it may not be geeky to one person, right? It might be
Right.
geeky to another. So I have always been fascinated with, um, in some ways, astronomy and the unknown. It's a passion I have that is a curiosity since I was a child, and so I'm fascinated with black holes and quantum physics, and the origin of things, and the fact that everything is literally made of energy fascinates me.
Mm.
So it always has, and I continue to be interested in on the side. I can't say that, I belong to clubs or that I can speak eloquently, but a little tidbit, little fact that when I was in university, and here I was taking a bachelor of music and a minor in sociology, I needed to take an elective. And I thought, oh man, astronomy, this is gonna be great. I'm gonna learn about all those things that I was interested in. Only to find, of course, that it was like all about physics, like heavy duty physics. And I'm like, why did I do this to myself? So, but I just find it fascinating, and I really enjoy that, the unknown and how far out there we can get. When the Mars, what's it called? What's this little Mars dude that's rolling around Mars? What's that little
Oh yeah, the rover, the what?
rover? Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
love stuff like that. I love looking to see that what they've discovered, and I'd love to know what the place is made out of and things like that. That's a little side geeky thing I have, and I play a mean game of ping pong. So.
I
I wish
love
I
it.
could, but I think it was
Love
I'm
it.
so sorry I always get it wrong, but I think it was at Babscong in San Francisco where we raised money, me playing ping pong with some other bronies.
That's outstanding. I'm a bit of a table tennis aficionado myself. That's so cool. No, I love everything you said. Yeah, we're all atoms, and I remember reading something where they were like, atoms can't actually physically touch each other, and yet we're all made of atoms. So how is it that we have physical form? It's like, oh,
And so that's all about frequency. That's what
mm,
if you resonate within a similar band of frequencies, then to you the touch seems physical. But if
mm.
you come out of that band, technically, you're in another band. So therein lies the question of what happens to us when we, spirit, soul, energy, physicality, frequencies, vibrations. It's intriguing. So I
Wow.
mean,
See,
water turning into vapor, things like
mhm.
that. Simple things. I used to love that when I was a kid in school too. I used to love to play with the magnets and the iron filings and stuff like that. Yeah.
Oh, see, this is why I like this. I can't Google this stuff. I can't
Oh,
find out what Kathy's into unless we sit down and we get to talk and we get to know the person behind these amazing characters. So I love this. I absolutely love this. So again, just giving you an opportunity to say your piece too. Are there any charities that you want to shout out? Any things, any big things you want to support or show? What should be people be checking out?
well, I'm a real fan of a group called Four Ocean, number four Ocean. And they're wonderful, a wonderful group. I'm not even going to talk eloquently about the details of them, but do go online, and I have supported them quite a bit. They provide bracelets. They clean up the beaches essentially, and they find pieces of glass and things like that. And they're just constantly doing this, and they've done an amazing job of it. And so I just love big organizations and small but grassroots organizations that are really making a change. So they're one group, because there are family members. There's a family member in my family at this time who has suffered a stroke, and so that I've been looking after in part. I really encourage people to give to the stroke societies, Heart and Stroke Foundation as well. But I don't. I'm going to have to find out. I guess the Delta Stroke Society. I'll have to give you, Mike, if you want me to be able to let you know
Sure.
directly via email and stuff. But I really support that, and I've learned a great deal about it. It's fascinating because when a person has a stroke, one of the big misnomers is that some of them lose part of their speech, others have problems with appendages, or they can't move them, and this and that. But their cognitive, it's assumed because they can't speak or they're having difficulties that their cognitive is affected. And in a huge like the majority are not, they're the same people, but they're having trouble getting it out.
Mm.
And that happens with any brain aneurysms. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm really generalizing here. There's also a book called My Stroke of Insight, I believe it's called. Jill Bolte Taylor. Everyone has to read that book. It's fantastic. And so those are the societies, those are the groups that I really love to donate to. And there's many others. There's just many others. Sustainability, anything that supports alternative energies, things like that. I love all that. So go to town, everyone.
No, that's great. That's great. I love
Just
to
smile
hear.
or for somebody, and
Mhm.
just help another individual on a small level every single day. Try to be positive. I thank people Every single day when I'm out in the world, I'm thanking service workers. I'm thanking the grocery store clerks. I'm thanking obviously doctors and hospital people, everybody for their service. And COVID has done a number on everybody. And I just think we all need to be acknowledged, and we need to get together as one and be a force of heart again. That's my big thing.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, that's again, we can't talk about it enough. Letting people know and reminding people that there's, this work is going out there. I've talked about charities that I've supported many times, and so I love to hear when other people are passionate about things and want to share it. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
So I did a little reading. I did a little diving into you, and I know that you were born in I believe it was Vancouver, Ontario, Canada. Uh,
Nope.
no, I man, the internet is wrong.
I was born in Toronto. In Toronto.
Toronto, Toronto. Thank you. I'm
Yeah.
bad internet, bad.
Okay. Lots of mistakes. Trust me.
So I'm just curious, growing up for you, what was that like? What was the family unit? Was it big family, small family? Paint us a picture. What was little Kathy like?
Little Kathy was very shy, but very quiet and introspective as I am now. I wouldn't say I'm necessarily quiet, but I'm not necessarily loud either. As a matter of fact, they always in the earlier days when they had the crazy actors bounding off like they would put me in the middle because I was pretty grounding. Um, I come from a very small family. Actually, I have a brother and wonderful parents. My father passed away when I was 20, and my brother 22, and it was a journey that took us to different areas within journeys, inward journeys, and so a lot had to change, and it was devastating for my family, my mother, and we made it through. And as a result, I didn't have a father past that point, and it was a difficult journey for him. It was a very, very, very difficult ending for him. And so, but we're very, very tight knit, and so is our cousins. We have a small family too, but our cousins are like our brothers and sisters. And so, having that meaning a lot to me was always something I carried with me, even in friendship and with strangers. That all of us, that connectivity of heart, was something that meant a lot to me as a child. And I also was a nature baby. So I used to love to take off on my bike, and I would anywhere that there was a river or there was, a trail for me to explore, I would be out there. So did a lot of solo journeying that way. Um, Went to high school, went to university in Ontario, got a bachelor of music degree, minor in sociology, and in the program, third and fourth year, I got into the CBC in the radio music department in Toronto through that program, and became a trainee associate producer for radio music, which got me out to British Columbia in Vancouver. So there's the Vancouver thing, where I worked as an associate producer on a show called Disc Drive for a couple of years, and worked on another show. And then all of a sudden, I started to do acting, and it just took off from there. And I couldn't imagine this as being a career. It was kind of like a hobby. The host of the show said, "You have a really nice voice." And I said, "Oh, gee, thanks. Have you ever done any voiceover?" And I said, "Voice what?" And he said, "Commercials, cartoons." I said, "No." And he said, "You need to think about that." And then someone told me do some on camera acting, which I dabbled in. But I hate memorizing, Mike. I hate it. Hate it, hate it. So much more fun just being in it.
No, I love it. And I mean, man, you literally beat me to my next question because I know that you spent time in the radio world and doing that. What kind of drew you to radio in the first place?
Well, it stemmed back to what I mentioned, and that was that the host of the show also worked at a radio station. And he's the one that heard my commercial voice. He didn't necessarily talk about animation. He was talking about commercials. And so he made a demo for me. He said, "You know what? I believe so much in you that," because he worked at CBC and then he worked at another station locally. He said, "I have a great engineer. I'll make a demo for you. Come on in. Let's do this and see. Let's get it out there." So I did that, and I knew the drama producers very well at CBC. They were wonderful, wonderful, and later freelanced for them. And they provided me with an agent. They said, "I think you're good enough to just get an agent. So let's try your luck." So I got an agent through them. But radio was the first medium in voiceover that they recognized some sort of talent in. And so I made a radio demo first, and then I did an animation demo. And they both took off, and I was quite amused. I was like, this is ridiculous. This is fun. Like, what? I wanted to be a composer of film and TV documentary because I had a music degree and I wanted to use it, but I also wanted to do documentaries that were passionate on certain topics and humanitarian. And that was what I was thinking at 18. But I also went to get a composer's degree. I wanted to compose music. Yeah.
Wow. It's like you have my script because my next question was going to be,
Yeah.
had the radio thing not happened, where was your head at? What kind of career path did you want to go down to? But you already answered that. You said
Well,
a
it's what I
composer.
thought at my age, like with what you have at 18, the tools that you have at that age, you only know so much. And my father was dying actually at that time when I was in first year university. So it was very challenging. And when you do a degree in music, whether it's composition as your major or a performer or a general degree in it, you need to be able to perform an instrument. And so I went in thinking I would be a composer and see what happened then, because I loved and respected classical music, but it wasn't my jam, so to speak. It wasn't like my major passion.
Right.
And then I had problems with my arm muscles at one point. They did not know what was happening, and so had to switch instruments. And so this whole program was going to fall apart. I came in as a viola player because I had it in high school. Viola and trumpet I played in high school, and but I had trouble with my arm muscles. And they said, if you're going to stay in this program, you need to have an instrument. What are you going to do? Can you sing? Can you play piano? I said, yeah, I can play a bit. I can sing a bit. And I thought, you know what? Let me try classical guitar. They're like, what? Try it? I said, well, I play guitar. I strum around. I can do it. I said, I'll learn it. So they introduced me to their Hungarian instructor, Tibor Puskás, who knew a great famous composer, his nephew, of Bela Bartok's nephew. And he said, if you can prove to me you can do this, then we'll let you continue the program. And so I did it. I worked, I went out to an hour's drive to Waterloo, Ontario from Toronto, and I put in the time and the effort, and I was able to do it, and I graduated with that performance degree too.
Wow.
It was something.
Can you
Dad
can
was dying, didn't know what was going on, fucking around with cartoons. I don't know. I survived.
Wow.
And
Hey,
CBC was tough. It was really hard. It was really
wow.
hard. I had to live up to working with producers that were like, live, 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 and it was tough. At the same time, my dad was dying. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, it's funny sometimes how the universe works itself out and where you end up. Can you still play any of the instruments? Do you still tinker?
I can play some of the instruments. I don't tinker as much because there's just so much else happening. So it's not something I just pick up and do. I have a keyboard at home, and I used to compose a lot of stuff, and I might get back to it at some point. But no, it's a little bit dormant at the moment.
Mm.
Yeah.
So again, if the internet's to be believed, I started digging around IMDb and looking at your work, which is extensive. I don't know if you've ever looked at the work you've done. It's an extensive, exhaustive list.
It
Uh,
is.
but going into the archives, digging all the way back, I'm not trying to date anybody here.
Mhm.
Uh, but I saw like the earliest work I could find was an English dub you did for Young Mowgli in the Adventures of Mowgli movie of 1973,
Yeah.
which I mean, I can't even fathom. And also the TV work, you did 42 episodes of Mobile Suit Gundam in
Yes.
79. So
Yes.
I'm curious, being new to the industry and kind of jumping in on these English dubs for already established properties, what was that experience like for you?
Well, when you're a relatively new actor, you take the work you get in front of you. And so we were kind of, when you're brand new, you're kind of winging it as you go. But I found that at the beginning, I did quite a bit of different kind of voicing for animation. So we had not only the Saturday, Sunday morning cartoon opportunities, which was TV at the time, but we also had dubbing for different countries. But whereas now there's so much anime, like it's all Japanese,
Mhm.
which is, well, not all, but it's dominantly Japanese. Back then, we were doing dubbing for many different countries. We did them for Italy, we did it for Wales, we did it for France. We did it for all these different countries. And so I got very used to the ADR dubbing and matching lip syncing. But at that time, we also did a form of ADR. I did a form of ADR work where I could do authentic, at that time, even boy characters and teen characters for authentic feature films, like live acting feature films. So there was oh God, I'm going to forget it. Adrian something or other. What was it? Oh, I can't remember the series now, but it should come. Um, I had to play this star of this series. I had to play him as a young boy. So there was an actual. This is a television series,
Mhm.
actual people, not cartoons, and they could not. And the boy had a Scottish accent because the lead character was Scottish. So
Okay.
they couldn't find a boy who had a Scottish accent to be able to do that authentically. So they brought me in. So I'd have to go into the studio, watch this, and the subtlety of the acting, it just had to be so real. So I had those skills because of those projects way early on. Great questions, Mike. You've dug deep. Thank you. They're
I
fun.
that that's
Yeah.
that's what we do here. That's what we do here.
Yeah.
I like to think of this as like this is your life, but the interview version. And again, like you're reading right from the script because I'm really curious about the dubbing versus original voices, the challenges you face when you're having to, whether it be animated or not, translate something, read it back, kind of match, versus, hey, this is an all original, IP, this is the thing we're going to do, and you need to create the voice. I'm curious, what from your perspective, what are the challenges between the two?
They're very different. You rely very heavily on the director when you're doing dubbing.
Mm.
Because when you're doing dubbing versus what we call prelay, which is working in a group of actors with a director and a client, dubbing is solo work. So you go in, you get your scripts a little bit in advance, not a lot in advance, but a little bit in advance. Sometimes right there on the day because of NDAs and privacy and all kinds of stuff. And you're going in by yourself, and so you have to read the befores and afters of your lines to know what's going on. So there's no actor there live to be able to spur you on or to have you react. So you have to be able to do that within yourself. With the help of the director, because the director will say, "Well, this is what the show's about. This is what's happening in this scene. This is what's happening," and so he's done this and that, blah blah blah, and it's very very quick. It's not like we have hours or whatever that we sit there
Right.
and ponder and do method acting or anything. It's just the general stuff. So that's helpful. The director just kind of goes boom, boom, boom. And the other thing is when you have an ADR script, like World Trigger is a big show that we did relatively recently, Yumakuga, and very interesting. Love that show. Love doing that show. Um, the character, like in any character, really, it starts to evolve with every script. And then as it does in the first like two or three scripts, you start to go, oh, that guy's this guy. Oh, that guy's got an issue with that. Oh, that guy's got that quirk. Or he's an alien, but he loves human food. And so there's like this comedy thing happening. So it just evolves as you go along. You're not even sure what to expect, right? Similarly to prelay, the same thing happens with your character development. But in that respect, you're just bouncing off other actors right there and then. So you can feel if in the script they cut you up or in the script they're supportive of you, you feel those emotions and you react, but you can't do that in the ADR.
Yeah,
Um,
and I
it's
sorry,
yeah.
I didn't mean to cut you off. I apologize. It's so fascinating because I often hear actors, they get like the big Marvel role, and people always ask like, oh, did you study the source material? Did you to get character insight? And so I wonder, for someone of you've done so much dubbing for established content. Do you ever, you get a character and then you go, let me look at some, like, even though you maybe can't speak the language, but like, do you ever watch episodes in advance to see like what might happen in the future?
No, no. It's very, very in the moment, and that's purposeful because usually if you're doing another version of something, say it's a comic book, like Cybersix was a comic book for an Argentinian comic book. So I didn't want to look at anything because I knew this was supposed to be done with a different group and a different so and so. And so you don't know what the clients are hoping for with respect to adaptation for the new audience. And so you just have to stay clear and clean and go with their direction. and this is what I do, and let the impetus come. So because in for me, it can get too heady. It's like, she did that? Why did she do that? Like that would just be too left brain. And actors
Mm.
need to have a little bit of information, but let it go. Find where it works for you. And then you're almost like a painting that's or a piece of clay that's being formed from yourself, but with the help of the directors and of course the clients who know what they want to do. So it's a moving piece of work and piece of art as you go. Yeah, I don't want any preconceived ideas because they may not be accurate.
Makes
Yeah.
sense. And I mean, if we're gonna live inside the character, well, they're experiencing this in the moment, so maybe you should experience this in the moment. You shouldn't know what's coming, kind of thing. Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, if they do want that to happen, then their job is to relay that to the director, who then has to relay it to me. And since I have cast and directed for a bit of time back in the day, it even is more helpful for me to, as an actor, because I understand what's required on both ends, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you first started getting these roles and doing the dub work and doing the voice work and a little bit of the acting work, I'm curious because like you said, this wasn't something that you had, oh, I started doing commercials when I was 6 and I worked my way up and I took all these classes. So I'm curious, like what was your uh where's your head at? You start to saying, okay, I'm getting these jobs, I'm doing this thing. Like, did you think it was silly? Did you like, I can't believe they're paying me to do this? Or like where were you at mentally?
Great. These are great questions. Thank you. It was where was I at mentally? Oh man, so many places at that time. I because so many things were happening. I was working at the CBC, and I was young, and I was having to keep up and learn different aspects of the job I was in. I was away from Toronto and my family. I had to actually find an apartment in 3 days. They told me I had the job, and then they're like, "We're flying you out this weekend, and you need to find a place to live." Blah blah blah. And it was during Expo, which is a kind of a fair we have in Vancouver, and the vacancy rate was 0.01 or something. It was insane. So I was very lucky to even find a place, and all you know is your new boss, who you hardly know. So all those things were kind of still in the play in the background. And my job was very demanding. I mean, it was very demanding, and we were doing live to air, live to tape and live to air shows as well. That was the nature of that show, which was, and we all, and myself and the other associate producer at the time, we had to rotate to actually direct the host, who was tricky too. He'd like to play around with us, and we would have to, like, because it was live to tape, we would have to, you know, fill it with music. Or if he went too long, we had to like, oh my God, we can't talk here. And so he would play with us. So I had all those stresses too. And of course, my father had just died, not that long before that, really, a few years before that. So there was a lot of newness, and and the acting thing was fun and exciting. And I thought I might get my hand it on camera because it was kind of fun. So all these things were new. There were so many news. And when I thought, yeah, this will be a hobby because I'm a
Mhm.
serious person. I have to get a serious job,
I'm an
right?
adult. Yeah.
Right. Right. And so CBC was like, oh, CBC. But yeah, but the core of my nature is I'm kind of a kind of half and half. I'm quite businesslike in a way, and sharp, and I've got a good mind, and yada yada. And the other part of me is very nature based and very creative. So I have a bit of a balance. I like to make sure both are there. And I was using both. So it was a bit confusing, exciting, um, yeah, and challenging all at the same time. But I trust it.
Mm.
You have to let go. I know you guys have to do that all the time. The unpredictabilities and the moment to moment, the fears, the training comes in and then it doesn't, and all the things that happen, those elements. I mean, I can't even compare it to what you guys have done.
Oh, I appreciate it. It's not about us though. It's about you. It's about you. Let's talk
Well,
about you. But thank you.
you guys,
Um, is
right?
do you recall the first time you kind of saw yourself, whether it was the made for TV movie or the TV episode, like the first time you heard your voice coming through in this media back at you? Do you remember the feeling? Were you disgusted? Were you excited? Were you happy? Were you
Oh,
critical? Where were you at?
crazy, crazy critical, crazy critical. Yeah, very, very critical because I was such a newbie. I didn't realize the balance about letting go in the performance, which you have to do in order to be able to take direction. And so the very, I mean, I did commercials, and I think it was a Bendorf Verster commercial, which dates me way back. That was like IBM back then. It was like they made photocopy machines and stuff like that. And so that was a commercial that I had heard come back, and I was like, "Oh my God, was I too?" This one, like, oh, it's painful. It's really painful. But I mean, they liked it, they used it. It's got to be okay. But when I was practicing, because when I was starting out, I mean, I started to, I actually could write my own commercials too, that I think are still good to this day, actually. And so I would practice going, the next time you take time for breakfast, take a minute for Minute Maid. Minute Maid, the very best way to get a head start to your day or whatever. And then in my mind, I would be like going, Bendorf First. Like, so they give you the copy, like, they don't even give it to you in advance in those days, really, and they still don't. They do kind, like, you could get it, but the way it was back then is you show up, the copy is on the counter, so you come early. Like, you have to audition for it, then you say you get the job, and then you come early for the gig. And I did, and go outside, and like, you don't want to overplay it, but you want to get a sense of it. And
Mm.
so I was far too rigid in wanting to say it a certain way to make sure it was right, not understanding that you have to let go and just get the gist of it. So I've taught now for decades, and I still teach, and I love teaching, love teaching. And I have so much to share now on that, how to get around that and what to let go of and not worry so much about
Yeah. At
too.
the end of the show, we'll plug your stuff because I want people to be able to find you and all that. So we will do that before we get off. One of the questions that always gets asked whenever we're doing these interviews, because for some reason people love to ask, is when you had your first big payday, like or maybe again, this isn't like you work your way up in the business. What was the first big like frivolous thing you bought, right? A car, a TV. What was that item? We always get asked every time. We always get asked this from the chat.
Guys do that, girls save.
Mm, okay.
I'm gonna let me just think if there is something. Well, I don't think that it was because of what I don't think it was because of the income I made from my acting. It might have been more the income I made from CBC, but
Mm,
just me being a saver from when I first got work as a 16-year-old, um, working as a receptionist at a air conditioning heating company. That's where I got, I guess, the voice there. And I said, well, I'm a saver. I was a saver. I'm, you know, you got to let it go. But I was back then, like everybody. So I mean, I think my first car. I think my first car. But my mom helped me with part of that fee when I was in my 20s, and yeah, and then the rest I paid myself, and then so I would say that if there was a thing. And I'm not an extravagant shopper. I really, actually, everybody, I kind of hate shopping. I'll go on occasion, for the social event of it, but I don't have like 40,000 pairs of shoes.
mm,
No. I love quality, and I love getting a deal on that quality. I don't have to, I never believe in paying top price, although I have, but not it like that. I don't see the point of that, right? I'm far
agreed.
more
Mm,
of a, if it's clean and it's great, it's a great location, good basic food, good with great people, doesn't have to be 10 stars to me. And if
I
I do
got
on
you.
occasion, great, but yeah, I'm pretty
We
laid back that
we
way.
we would get along great. I feel you on all that. What was the first car? What was it? You remember?
You're gonna laugh. It was a great little car. I called it Buster Blue. Buster. It was a little Toyota Tercel, standard.
Okay.
And I got that because I mean, obviously, I had to think about economy, and I knew it was reliable. Like a Honda or a Toyota back in those days was reliable. But you're gonna laugh because I didn't know how to drive standard when I bought the car, and I coerced the guy to throw in 2 lessons. True story. I knew what car I wanted to buy. I was in town for in Vancouver for 2 years, and did fine without a car, and I thought, "I need a car. I want a car because I wanna explore this area." And I did a lot of research, and I found how much the actual wholesale price was, how much their profit margin was, and I'm not normally that detailed because
Mm,
I don't, you know, but I wanted to get a good detail. So I knew the car I was gonna buy, and the day I bought the car, I was all, like, ready to buy it. I literally had the check in my hand, and I thought, well, if they have this car, I'm going to buy it. But I had a terrible cold that day, terrible cold. And I thought, do you want to go now? And I'm like, yeah, go a half hour before closing, get her done. So I went, and it turned out they had that car. I said, "Oh my God, there's the one on the lot." It had nothing, no fixings on it. It was a basic car, right? But it was economical, and I could afford it. And so he took me. He goes, I said, "Is that a standard?" He's like, "Yeah." Okay, great. So he goes, "So let's go to the neighborhood." So he taught me. I said, I said, "Okay, great." And he goes, "Okay, here you go." And I said, "I don't know how to drive it." He's like, "Excuse me." So he taught me right there and there on how to drive it, and I picked it up in no time. And I said to him, "You know what?" Because I knew all the research. I said, "I'm going to buy. I'll buy this car right here, right now. But this is my bottom line.
Mm.
I have to talk to the manager. I have to talk to the manager." So he talked to them, and I knew that they still would make a profit off me of what I pitched. And he just thought I was hilarious. And he said, "Okay." And I said, "But you have to throw in two lessons." And he did. And then he asked me out for dinner. So you're
There
getting
you
the dirt,
go.
bud. You're getting the dirt, everybody.
This is the stuff you can't Google. You can't Google this stuff.
No,
I love it.
I've never had such a great well, I have had great interviews, but this is a great interview.
I appreciate it. Man, there's so much, and I mean we're already burning through time. Um, what has what has been your favorite role? And I know you. I mean, you've had so many. Maybe not necessarily what's been the most popular, but just to you, what's been the favorite role that you've had?
There's many favorites. There just simply isn't one.
Mm,
And that includes TV acting. I did some TV acting. Um, and those were kind of smaller gigs. They were guest roles, which was just fine with me. I didn't need to be the golden girl, you know? I played lawyers, and of course everyone's played reporters, but oh, they're just all swimming through my mind right now. I mean, excuse me, Cybersix was a real highlight for me because it was one of the first animation series that was the lead was a woman, and
mm,
it's just so rare, and it still is. And so back in the '90s, I guess it was. Um, Late '80s, early '90s, I guess we did this, and it was 13 episodes, and we thought for sure it would go on to 26. It still could. I can still do that role, and I can still do "Hiya, Rama, Mama, take shampoo to date." And this was like decades ago. They're like, "Oh, you're too old now. You can't." They didn't say that, but people think we're too old. We can't do the voice. Yes, we can. Nothing's changing for me.
mm,
I'm just putting that out there. So Cyber 6, I would say, it was so unique and so wonderful, and it was a drama, and it was about this cyber, half human woman who was struggling with her humanity. She had a crush on this teacher, and so by day she was a teacher, but she disguised herself as a male teacher.
mm,
I don't know why. And then at night, she dressed into this outfit, and she's jumping on the rooftops, doesn't fly, jumps on the rooftops, and is needing sustenance, which is this goop that this mad scientist had that she needed to live, but at the same time was fighting crime. I mean, and the background was very new for those days. The coloration was like gorgeous oranges and blues and purples and blacks, and the camera angles were cutting edge at the time. And so all of that was new, and it was kind of like a European setting. So I loved that show. Loved that show. It was really great.
that's
But
awesome.
um,
Hashtag bring it back.
I'm ready.
um, how do you find the voice for characters, right? Because I'm assuming if it's some type of again like a dub and maybe trying to match a little bit of what that character is, but when they come to you and say, "Hey, this is a whole new character. There's nothing that exists on it, excuse me, in the world." How do you find the voice for that character?
A lot of it is um, you have to begin with the things they request from you. So they provide you with a description of various things. There's a show outline in general. There's other characters that you can look into see what they do, what they're doing, how they interact. But they give you a very general description, very basic, not much general description, but your character, and most times have a diagram. In the old days, we wouldn't even have pictures of the characters. Sometimes we just had the description. So you would just sort of formulate that. And if there's a picture, I always say to my students, an actor would just kill for the picture alone, even if there's no information, because you get a feeling from that character, and you can be that character, and you can just be what you are within it. It's a lot easier. It gets very heady with too much definition, and you don't want to lock in case the clients have a different idea. So usually I just kind of say, okay, I have to meet that mark, and I have to meet that mark with respect to the type of character, but the rest of it's got to be in this range. This is the age they're talking about. Let's go. So if I'm doing ages, like if I'm doing female girls or youth, and like it's more older now because I'm an older age, even though I can still do it, everybody. Um, then I have to play in that range. But then, Mike, they've got authentic acting, authentic character voicing versus character voicing, and there's all those levels. So in some cases they really want to make it real, and in other cases there's lots of room to be a little bit more cartoony. So there's that too. And you
Wow.
just kind of go after time having so much experience, you just know where to cut the corners, and that's what they probably want. But it takes time.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I know from speaking with other voice actors, and we've had some really great ones, like Rob Paulson's been on the show, and God, I love him. Grew up Pinky in the Brain. Come on,
Yeah.
um, the the amount of stress that puts on you, that this puts on you physically. I mean, how do you prepare yourself for a session? What's your kind of routine to get ready for this?
Uh, I would say, I mean, that has certainly changed over decades, right? Because now it's old hat in some ways. I mean, everything's new, and you still have the respect and the dedication and the ethics that you need to have to do a good job. But when I was much younger, there were so many unknowns, and there was a lot more competition in the way that you're not knowing the atmosphere or the whatevers of, you just don't know what. So you're doing the best you can, and so it's a little bit more stressful, definitely. But now, I mean, I've done so many of them that there's a rhythm. So when I get an audition for an animation part, I look over it, the description. I get a sense of how that character plays within the other characters, or what their role is, or what their personality is based on the description. And then I read the script that we're given, the audition that we're giving, to get a sense of the interplay. And then I just try to be as fluid as possible. I think it's very important for any actor to see what comes before and after your lines, to see if there's any action happening. You're completely responsible as an actor to be able to make sure that all the action is in your performance. So, I teach this in my workshops too, and also in the private coaching. Like if you're jumping off a cliff, you have to, like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, and then you got to do the and you have to know how high that might be. So all those things, those little nuances are important. A smile shows up in the performance, right? But so does reflection and acting that's very intimate. Little tricks, like if you're behind a rock and you're whispering, you can't whisper as if I'm whispering to you, just we're talking in your room there. It would be, you have to keep tone to that. So if I'm behind a rock, David, I told you not to go. Listen to me. That's a whisper talk.
Mm.
Whereas, don't go, David, like that. It just doesn't. So you learn those tricks as well. Stress would only come if the character perhaps was really just out of my range, but I can do it, which means there could be taxation on that throat if we're doing
Mm.
26 or 52 episodes. That's a
Yeah.
real.
Here,
Um,
I was like, I'm thinking, oh, a glass of lemon, but I like your answer, lemon water. I was thinking that's how I prepare. Your
yeah,
answer was way better, way,
yeah.
way better.
Well, no, because there's more. There's so much more that people don't understand
Mhm.
that makes you nervous, right? It's not just, does your voice going to cut. And by the way, room temperature water is the best thing. Room
Room
temperature
temperature
water,
water.
or hot
I
in the
like it.
winter.
Because I've heard all I mean, I've heard the craziest things. They're like, throat spray and, they suck on a lemon and all this and all that. So I'm always curious.
I mean, maybe that's what helps certain people. It comforts them. But honestly, coffee. I mean, I drink coffee in the studio. I love coffee. It's my wine. But I'll only like maybe have one or so because it can dry you out. It doesn't bother me, but for some people it would. You don't want to do milk. You don't want to do gummy stuff, and even like like pop and stuff, because it's gummy and it produces phlegm, right? You don't want
Mm.
that. And things that are cold, really, really cold, is going to tighten your cords. So I know that stuff. But I just say, don't have any dairy before you go in there, really, and just have room temperature water. I have coffee, but for me, it's fine. Right.
What do you think, Coach? Do I have the talent? Could I get into this line of work? Do I have the voice for it?
Talk to Matt Hill. Do you know who he is?
No.
Matt Hill?
Who's Matt Hill?
Matt Hill's got a fabulous raspy voice. You've got that texture, Mike. So when you would, so yeah, you've got that. Come on, you guys, let's go, dude! Like Mutant Ninja Turtles, right? Like you'd fit in there, right?
I grew up on that stuff, man. You're talking my era, the Spider-Man cartoon, the Batman cartoons where he's all deep and raspy and like, oh. Love that stuff growing up.
The thing is, like, so you've got a nice texture just as is. But what's important is that you can tax that. It can be taxed because yours is still light, but it's got texture. So you have to make sure that you support with tone. You have to support it with your tone because
Mm,
you could lose your voice relatively quickly if you're doing something taxing for a long, long period of time. So
mm.
tone is everything for you. And we don't really use our diaphragm like singers do unless we're yelling and screaming for a long period of time. You have to support it. Otherwise, you're going to be projecting from your neck and not realize that. And you could lose your voice. You have to watch for notes, not you per se, but
Right. No, I've seen videos of like Kevin Conroy, who's famous for doing the Batman voice, and how he just slips in and out of it. Like you don't see like he's, oh, I'm forcing it. Like it's instant change. And, or even like Mark Hamill doing the Joker, you would think
yeah,
like he strains and like, oh, like, no, it just comes out instantly. It's
yeah,
incredible.
because their performance, they were chosen for many reasons, but they have it's in their natural range, so they're not straining to retain that. They're just going to get whatever they have in their mind of the voice they want. They're just going to get the actor where that's their natural range because then there's no straining,
Yeah. No,
right?
that makes perfect sense. That makes
Yeah,
perfect sense. And
yeah.
I'm going on record. Kathy, she said I could do a Ninja Turtle. I'm clipping that. I'm keeping it forever.
Audition, okay? I'm going to tell you, you still have to audition, okay?
I got,
I have to audition for everything, almost everything, not everything.
I'm putting that on my resume. Kathy said I can do a Ninja Turtle. That's it. I'm going for
That's
that.
power.
Um, so I mean, on top of everything we've already discussed, you've also done voice work for video games,
Yeah.
and that's where most people, the layperson, might consider that to be that's the same thing. You're doing a voice for a character. I happen to know it's very different. I mean, can you describe just like what is the biggest differences in doing video game work versus animated or other things?
Well, I think I mean, quite honestly, the performance is similar. Although the actual recording session is different because they want you to do smaller bites. They want you to do, so usually they're shorter phrases, but as far as the performance, it's the same approach as animation. But what they're requiring are, you know, um, let's take this one sentence three times, short, medium, long. And then there's a library, which we do in animation too. We do a voice library of grunts, of runs, of jumps, of exerts, and things like that. So they're much smaller, the sentences really that we do for video games, because it's like, eat my dust or whatever, and like, um, oh yeah, take that big guy, because I'm gonna just blah blah blah, right? Or whatever. Like, so they're shorter, but
Mm.
that's all I would say. And then they have to code them. They have to code them. I mean, there's all the work where animatics and things like that where people have to dress up and they're suspended and stuff like that. I haven't done much of that, no, for video gaming, but that is another whole thing, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, they're
Uh,
just the approach is the same. As
Okay,
far
and because I know, especially more today, a lot of video games with with the power and the animation studios, like they want to do the motion capturing, and so people doing the voices sometimes have to put on the suit and do that. And I'm sure that's a lot more. That's a lot more closer to acting than voice acting.
well, the motion capture, those guys are mostly doing the physicality for the animators rather than the voicing.
Mm,
And it's interesting when animators ask us, or I think an animator, I've had animators direct shows before. Their questions are somewhat different than a actual voice director who does it in the standard way, because they are looking at design, so they have action in their head. So they're always thinking about that part of it, which is interesting because I can understand why they would ask us that. So therefore, I'm always thinking more of action and performance. When you've got a voice director that has animation background, you're very aware of the action that you're performing, which you have to be anyway, but
right.
it matters to them even a little bit more. Yeah. So
Makes sense.
that's very interesting.
So I mean, you've done again. We've said so many things. But one thing I mean I have to spotlight, and we teased it earlier, is My Little Pony because
Mm.
now I'll be honest, personally, I'm not familiar with the material. I have maybe
Mike,
maybe in passing I might have seen an episode or two, but I can't. I'm not a brony.
you're not.
I'm
You haven't
not.
military bronies? What?
I know just how popular it is. I'm well aware in the pop culture realm of just how significant it is and how big a following it has.
Mhm.
I'm When you first got involved with the My Little Pony, were you aware of how big of a following it had or might have in the future? Is that something that comes into your mind at all when taking something like this?
Not at all. Not at all. This was another show of many shows that we have to audition for, that we try out for in the way we always do for every show that we do to get work. It's work. And we had no idea. We didn't even know what was happening. I mean, I remember the very day I went into the studio, and I think it was Andrea and Tabitha were in there, Tabitha St. Germain and Andrea Libman. And one of them had said, "Did you see the McLean's, this Canadian McLean's magazine on a group called Bronies?" And I'm like, "What? What?" And apparently, and so that's when it started. We're like, "What?" And so we were like, "What is this? What is happening?" Right? And it just grew and grew and grew and grew and grew. And so I have a minor in sociology. So this fascinated me on a completely different level. And I just got so interested and so involved in that that I was actually eventually I started to do some talks because separately from me, sociologists were studying this,
Mhm.
psychologists were studying this, people were fascinated. And I mean, it was such a wonderful, authentic, visceral movement that this show created that helped people heal people, bronies in particular at the time, but also it was such a wonderful show. The morals and values were genuine. Nobody disses anybody. It's okay to have issues. That just brings interest and things we can learn from as opposed to discrimination. So this show was something that never happened before, and I loved it. But no, we never knew that, and so I wanted to explore that. And I got involved with talks so much so I got to know the sociologist, and we did a talk in New Jersey on the Jersey Shores. We did one there in 20 I think it's 2017. It was just fascinating, and I'm still interested in it. What was it? What was it? Was my question that ignited so many people of this designation and more all of a sudden. And it was because the group of these people who, in one way, shape, or form, did not feel that they belonged or felt not secure in who they were or in their community, had had abuse, were frightened, or were just interested in the show itself and its wonderful innovations because it was really a cool show the way it was written. They would adopt things from movies like The Big Lebowski and throw jokes in. Like they had all these weird things that were really cool. And thank you, Lauren Faust, the creator. She did a great job. So yeah, we had no idea, and then it exploded. And I think I know this sounds so mamby-pamby to some people, but understood by others, is that it has to do with heart and it has to do with acceptance. And so these people, this is what brings me to tears to this day. These people who watch this show were given so much by the show that they were literally able to come out from their isolation, be able to tell someone else about it, which was a big motivation for people isolated, make friends with other people who felt the same way, and then actually come out into the world, go out and see these conventions, start to explore friendships, start to explore their talents, and to feel safe in doing so. And that exploded and exploded and exploded. And the next thing you know, we're literally having an authentic en masse healing. People were brought back from suicide time and time again. And if that ain't something that is worth mentioning and worth working on, sharing in, being a part of, I don't know what could be, because no one could really explain that uh, energy of love and acceptance in the way that this show did. And it's that generation. My Little Pony Friendship is Magic Generation 4.
Yeah.
It left me changed, you know. So
I
it's
it,
wonderful.
it's so incredible. Again, from the outside, just looking in, and I've always being a comic book fan and cartoon fan, and growing up on this stuff and loving conventions and things like that. I've never been once like, oh, how weird, you like a cartoon, like. Because like I like Spider-Man. I like I like Bat. Who am I to judge about liking a cartoon or a comic or a thing or a video game or whatever it is? I never got into it, but I've always heard such positive, uplifting things. And part of me does wonder. Again, the content's great. So we're not taking away that the content's great and all that's great, but I also wonder too sometimes like to capture magic in a bottle, is it like where is the world in that moment, right? Where's technology? Like certain things became popular because it was at the advent of the internet and groups, and you could form those cliques where you couldn't before, and so like
Right.
it hit this perfect storm of where
Absolutely.
everything was right there and ready to happen. But again, not to take away because there's other cartoons at that time. There's other content at the time. You people could have bounded around anything, but something about that show in particular really spoke to people. For instance,
Yes.
I know you had a big part in Dragon Ball Z, which was one of my favorite all-time things growing up. I have Funko Pops back there, and you got to voice a number of characters. Namely, one was Trunks, which was my favorite character growing up. Something about the purple hair and the sword. I know you did the young version, but that was always my favorite character, and that was my introduction in the '90s to Japanese anime. And so the kind of the hopping off for me, and I know so many other people at that point.
Hmm.
And again, that's one of those shows that uh, even for those that are not anime fans, you'd be hard pressed to find people that, oh, I don't know what Dragon Ball Z is. Like it was such a part of mainstream culture that
Yeah. It was.
adults knew it, parents knew it, grandparents knew it, kids knew it. Whether you watched it or not, you knew it. You knew Goku, you knew Vegeta, you knew these characters that were larger than life. Are you at all blown away to see how popular it still is today, having played such a big part of it?
Yes and no. I mean, because the whole My Little Pony experience, for example, uh, occurred, and there still is no explanation for it. I mean, I think I have my own version of explanation of that. But I think any of these things that do take off like that, like you said, it's a coming together of many elements and the times, and so much of that is unspoken. It's visceral. It's visceral, and so it doesn't surprise me when any real project or movie or film or series or whatever it takes off because it's appealing to a certain group of people, maybe not others, but it is appealing to something that's needed at that time. And I really think because I mean, Dragon Ball Z, that was a long time ago, but it was also very, very new anime. So it was kind of new and like, what is this? This is cool. And like, I mean, I don't think I've ever done so much of this in my life in midair, like it's just crazy town, right? I always say that Dragon Ball Z was like one of the most exhausting shows because we're always doing so much action. We're rolling down hills and we're fighting each other and like, oh my God, right? And I was young, thank God. Still can do it. But I mean, with the My Little Pony thing, just to bring it back to that, I really do having wanted to go into sociology in a way outside of the composer stuff. Like I wanted to blend them. It was a critical mass. I think there had a lot. It had a lot to do with identity, male identity in some ways, but not just male identity, machoism versus sensitivity versus what if I'm a sensitive man and I'm not a macho guy? What if I am gay? I'm not gay. What if? There's all this stuff about identity and labeling and all this sort of thing. And yet, what it really was a massive healing. It was a massive healing and permission. You're okay. It's okay to be you. And then there's this like right, so I think with all the things happening and the wars happening and the changes happening and now climate change happening, there's just so like who the heck are we? And so to me, see, in the old days, identity came from role models and role modeling, right? That's how we knew who we were, what we're supposed to do, how we act, how we behaved, the etiquettes, yeah, yeah, yeah. Now anything goes. So what's the commonality? Human nature, heart. We all hurt, we all desire, we all are sad, we all have our needs and our troubles and our questions, etc. So that's what makes us human. That's our commonality. It has nothing to do with gender. It has nothing to do with status. It has nothing to do with career. It has nothing to do with anything. We're all the same. Our experiences, our influences, what we come across are all different, but at core, we're the same. And so, how do we behave in this world? Where's our guidance then if we don't have roles? ethics, kindness, generosity to anybody, not anyone because of status, what they have, what they don't have, who they are, what they dress like, nothing. Kindness. This is the thing about My Little Pony. Elements of harmony were generosity and kindness, and I'm going to forget them.
It's been a
Magic
minute.
was one of them too. And so all these things is what so everything just blurred out, and that was our gauge, being kind to one another
Mm,
because we're human.
wow.
So I think that all those things were what was happening for that at that time.
Wow. I can't believe it. We've been talking for an hour, which is incredible. You are a phenomenal, and I could talk to you all day. Do you want to do a couple quick lightning round, super fast questions, and we'll call it a day?
You bet.
Thank you so much for your time because this has been such a good. People
Pleasure.
need to hear this. People need to hear this. Okay.
Great.
So you do a lot of conventions. What's off the top of your head? What's the most memorable fan interaction you had, good or bad?
I'm just wondering if I can say it.
You can.
Um, well, there was one that was heart wrenching and heartfelt, and it involved an individual. And this is not the only time. It involved an individual that was having a an incredible struggle. And I had come off of some of my own stuff with extended family and challenges that just came out of the blue that were very intense, very, very trying and challenging. And I was able to bring that to the table at this convention out of the blue. And so someone had asked me would I be able to speak to them, and they were like wonderful, wonderful person. And I had no idea that my influence that day prevented them from taking their life.
Wow.
And that was one story. They're not alone. That's not that was not an isolated story, by the way. And so I tie that in with the fans that come to me, who are quadriplegics. They wait in line for 2 hours of my time, and we're only supposed to go like an hour and a half or whatever the schedule is. I mean, we're going 2 hours now, but I think it was over that. I think it was 2.5 hours, maybe longer, at the last BronyCon. This is the main Brony convention. It was the last one in Baltimore. They were so big they had to be in Baltimore, and I waited that 2 and some hours just to wait because they waited. I'm not going to look at my watch and go, "Oh, time's up." No, no. And so those kinds of things, meeting those kind of people that have the dedication to come. They're paraplegic. They can't move. They can't speak. They have tubes in them. They're traumatized, or they traveled like billions of miles to get here. That touches me, and I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. So there's many of those. The other one was just that I think it was in one of the times I was in Ohio. I stole the walkie-talkie from the assistants, and I did it as my voice of Spike, and they had to find me. So it was just a stupid thing, but it was just hilarious.
I love that. You got to have fun with it. Okay. Trying to think of quick questions. So you've done so many different types of roles, gender, age, all of it. Is there anything on like an acting bucket list that you haven't yet gotten a chance to do that you'd like to do? Maybe a musical character?
I don't, it's funny because I don't think in those terms. No.
Mm,
I mean, because every character role that comes to me is unique and different and interesting and has different challenges. So that fulfills that. But no, there's no I wish this or I wish that. I love doing like no, I mean, I used to be a cartoony actor. And I can still do stuff like this all the time. Like, I did a ton of that stuff. It's not crap. Way back in the day. And I don't do as much of that. And I'm like, come on, I can still do that. So, but there, you go for what the roles are there, and it's very hard because you have a certain amount of time where things can get pulled out of you. There's a lot of actors out there now, etc. So, always looking for interesting and different stuff, but happy to do the standards too.
gotcha. What is something that you did? You're super proud of it. Maybe for whatever reason, people didn't get to see it. You wish they would go back and watch it just because you were so passionate about it.
Definitely Cybersix.
Cybersix.
Definitely Cybersix, because it was left as a hanging thing, but it had really, really amazing moments and real teaching moments and heartfelt moments. And My Little Pony too. Like, I mean, one of my favorite episodes, I'm always asked this of Friendship is Magic, is the times they are a changeling. It was, Spike is so naive and he's a cute little guy, but he's brave. It was so beautifully written. It was funny, really funny episode. And so everybody in the kingdom are worried about changelings because they change and you never know, and they might be after the baby because they suck off joy and harmony, right? And so Spike's like, like the sentries were going to go out and find this changeling out there, and Spike wanted to go, right? So the honorable Spike, what should we do? And he's like, go that way, and you guys go that way, and go that way. And he's kind of like afraid of his own shadow and stuff. It was just, and it brought in friendship. And so the thorax was the alien, and he was shy and nervous, and he really just wanted a friend. He didn't want to do any harm, like all the morals and values. And my character got to sing a song that had an actual, I think, actual string orchestra. It was recorded, but I was able to sing a beautiful song, beautiful, beautiful, heart wrenching song in that. So that was really memorable. And yeah, people can watch that. But there's so many
We're
things.
gonna we're gonna we're gonna put links to all this so people can find it. Okay, a couple more. So we've seen over time, when the market gets saturated with certain things, there tends to be some kind of burnout. So like zombies were a hot commodity for a minute, and vampires are a hot commodity. I think you more than anyone have such an expertise and experience in the field of cartoons and these kind of things. Do you think with the rise of popularity in superhero genre right now, Marvel, DC, all these things, do you think that we're coming close to or will ever see kind of a superhero burnout?
That's interesting question. Wow. I think so, if I understand your question correctly, in the way that it's being done now, which is a lot, I won't say the same, but
Mm,
it's kind of
similar.
maybe similar in what the model is. Because to me, the superheroes are no longer those superheroes. Superheroes today are people who have stamina. Like superheroes to me are you guys, the military guys, 100%. The people that look after their loved ones who are quadriplegics, the service worker that puts in, you know, insane hours a day and is going overtime and leaving their children at home to care for somebody who's dying because of COVID and their loved one can't phone them. I mean, the heroes, these are the heroes, including obviously the military and the defense, of course. But there are common folk who are heroes every single day of this life in this world, and they need to be celebrated. And that's us. That's us. We need to acknowledge the humanitarian things that we do for one another and the challenges that we have. One person could be on paper, wow, look what they did. Wow, look what they suffered. But what about the internal struggles, the mental health that nobody can get into and see on those quiet times when somebody is suffering so badly and no one can get into them, inside them? And yet they survive. And not only do they just surviving makes them a hero. I mean, that terminology is just so right. So those definition of hero is very different for me now.
That was perfect. Well said. We're gonna end it on that because that was beautiful. I wanna end it on that. Where can so this is the last question actually. Where can people follow you on social media? Where can they check out what you've got going on, and where can they show love and support to you?
I'm only on two social media platforms. So I'm on Twitter and Instagram. And Twitter is at Cathy Weseluck, and Instagram is Cathy_Weseluck. And they're both a lot of fun. I mean, Instagram, I do a lot of, you'll see the nature side of me. I'm very sentimental. I love photography. And so a lot of things get posted like that there, supportive, healing, wonderful, just scenery, fabulous stuff. And also postings when I'm doing appearances. And Twitter too is just a continuation on my fan base. So those two in particular. I still do private coaching. Online at this time for COVID and just my schedule. So that's still occurring. And I hope to open a bit more of that. And I do not have an official website, it's a website posting. And so it needs to be updated as well, terribly. And I'm afraid I have an email that's cwvoice@telus.net that is specifically and only for that reason, pretty much. Or people can try and contact my talent agency, which is the Characters in Vancouver, British Columbia, for fan mail, but also to get any more information. But on Instagram and Twitter, you'll find everything that needs to be said further of any appearances or conventions I'm going to.
Awesome. Oh, Cathy, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you for your time. This was incredible. You, my goodness, my throat today. Talking to a voice actor, and I can't get my voice right. You, you have been honest and open and humble, and this has been an incredible conversation. I want to give you the last 5 seconds to say goodbye to the audience, and then I will toss it to a break.
I just want to say I love you guys and girls and women and youth. You are the backbone of our society in the honor and the focus and the heart and the vulnerability you bring to your job and your service. So I want to thank you with all my heart. And for all of those who can't say it, even within your families, in your regimes, I'm saying it for them too. So take care of yourselves. Um, don't be hard on yourselves. Love yourselves and give yourselves room and space to be who you are outside of this. It's really important. We love you and care about you. And those who are struggling, you're going to be okay. So we're with you and continue to have fun. Nature, and I say this delicately, I don't mean this in any opposition to anything, but nature is truly my religion. And so there's a lot of healing to be done there. Have fun, enjoy the simple things in life, and stay with heart. Choose love.
Words to live by. This has been Cathy Weseluck. Thank you so much. We'll be back with more right after this.
Thanks, everyone.